All right, Thembisa Fakude is a Senior Research Fellow and Director at Africa-Asia Dialogue. So very good evening to you, sir. Always a pleasure to see you here on SABC News.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's start here. I mean, Anthony Blinken's concerned that there's a risk of conflict in Gaza spreading. Is that a legitimate concern? And where does he mean for it to be spreading exactly?
I think it's a legitimate concern, particularly following the assassination of Saleh Aruri in Beirut. So that gives a concern. And we also had the explosion which killed over 100 people in Iran next to the grave of Qasem Soleimani, the leader or the general of the Islamic Army that was killed by the Americans over 2 years ago. So because of that, I think there is a concern that this war should spread. Already, you have 3 countries that are claiming that at least the Israelis are involved in some sort of targeted assassination. Not only do we have the Houthis in Yemen who continue to target ships that are destined to Israel on the Red Sea, now we have what happened in Beirut and in Iran. So this is certainly likely to spread to other countries in the region.
What do you make of the U.S. Secretary of State, taking his 4th visit to the region? I mean, on the back of the fact that, there is a perception, and I think it's something that people might even say is quite obvious, perhaps that the Biden administration has kind of taken a side in this whole matter and seems to indeed be siding with Israel. How should these visits be perceived by the general public and the people of Gaza in general?
Well, the Palestinians, particularly people in Gaza, don't really care much about what the Americans are doing at the moment, because the Americans have taken a very clear position. They've gone to an extent of even questioning the number of people that have been killed. We know at least now that over 22,000 people have been killed. Joe Biden is on record as saying he doubts whether those numbers are correct. So the Americans have taken a very clear position. They've vetoed attempts and resolutions. One of them was sponsored by the United Arab Emirates, calling for a ceasefire. The Americans vetoed that more than 4 times. So the Americans are really not taken seriously or liked at the moment by the people, particularly those in Gaza, who are on a daily basis facing bombardment and the destruction of property by the Israelis. So it's, I don't think it's even making headlines that Anthony Blinken is going to be visiting Israel, because his visit has not yielded any results over the past couple of months, at least since this war started, and many people doubt if he is likely or going to be pushing for any ceasefire or assistance on behalf of the Gazan to, 1, stop the continual bombardment, and 2, to open up even more routes towards access for humanitarian relief, which the Gazan people are desperately in need of at the moment.
Yeah, you talk about the U.S., having been actually quite clear about where they stand. Interestingly, South Africa too has made its position. I think South Africa was initially quite clear in terms of where they stand on the issue. But this issue with the ICJ has made the matter even more clear. What do you think of this? I mean, particularly given the fact that I think the U.S. has always considered itself, the big brother of South Africa, and that we should take whatever position that they take. And the fact that the South African government has gone, a step further, in fact, and decided to even take it to the ICJ. What's your view on all of this, and how we're on completely opposite sides, or on different sides with the U.S. and I'm sure the U.S. would not like that very much. And I think not long ago we also hosted Anthony Blinken here in South Africa.
Well, the United States know exactly where it stands when it comes to Israel. They support Israel totally and completely, and they support Israel at the moment as it continues with the mass murdering of the Palestinians. But South Africa, of course, has taken a much more sensible position, and because of our history in South Africa, we have no choice but to take this position. We experience something similar to what's happening in Israel. And I've argued in the past that what's happening in Israel at the moment is far, far much more worse than apartheid, even though people continue to call Israel an apartheid state. Is not an apartheid state. I think we need to find another term to describe the Israeli regime, which continues to kill people the way it's doing. So South Africa is taking a much more stronger position, and I think at the moment it's one of the favorite countries, at least in the streets of the Arab world. And we are likely, of course, to have a show starting on the 11th, I think 10th, between the 10th and 11th of January. But the most important thing, of course, this is that not only is it going to highlight the significance of the small little country in the tip of Africa, but it's also going to expose Israel. I mean, Israel has made a lot of accusations. And Israel has also denied that on 7th October, it shot its own people, by the way, by mistake, as it was trying to go against the Hamas, who were inside Israel. There are reports that Israel actually shot its own people and those that attended the concert, or those that they thought were Hamas. So we're likely to get a lot of information as this unfolds next week. But also important is that Israel is going to be in a back foot because if this is televised, it's another PR disaster, or it will be a PR disaster for Israel. But I think for South Africa, it's going to be a good show. For South Africa, it's going to enhance its international relations, particularly at the United Nations, because South Africa, that's where this is going to be taking place. So South Africa is going to be there and showing off its capability, and again, borrowing a lot from what has happened in the past in this country, and that is likely to garner a lot of support around the world.
Yeah, I want to get your viewpoint on this. I mean, we hear that the Israeli government has, unveiled a new plan which, outlines its conditions on how Gaza should be governed. And some would say, well, what a nerve, post the war. What are your thoughts on the Israeli government going as far as saying that, these are our conditions and this is how Gaza should be governed? I mean, what should we make of this?
Well, this was meant by the defense minister of Israel, Yoav Gallant, who suggested, number one, that Gaza is going to be under Israeli control, but at least when it comes to military and defense of Gaza, they are obviously not looking at working with Hamas. They're looking at obliterating Hamas, which is almost an impossibility to have that happen. They're looking at having some international coalition forces that will come and assist in rebuilding Gaza. So the whole thing is pie in the sky, because one, you have to deal with Hamas and Islamic Jihad, which are the two most popular political organizations in Gaza. So you can't have a post-war Gaza without involving the two. That's the first point. The other point is that you also can't ignore countries that have been involved in assisting the Gazans, particularly the Qataris and the Iranians, who have continued to work with the Gazans. So if you want to have a lasting peace, you are going to have to deal with the Hamas and Islamic Jihad. And as far as the defense minister Gallant is concerned, these two organizations at least are not going to be part and parcel of the future governance of Gaza.
All right, Mr. Fakude, it's always a pleasure hearing from you. We certainly do appreciate your input here on SABC News. Thembisa Fakude is a Senior Research Fellow and Director at Africa-Asia Dialogues.